Super, thank you. Next slide, please. So just a quick rehash because a couple of these names have changed over time. So our regional coordinator, so if you have questions about the Brownfields program overall, I am a really good person to reach out to. But then when there's site-specific questions, I go through the regional coordinator. So Capri Shaw in the Springfield office, Joanne Fagan in Northeast region, Kevin Doust in Worcester, and Kate Carvalho in Southeast region. And as Millie introduced earlier, we have our environmental justice and brownfields coordinator, Abby Anderson, working with me in the Boston office, who's tremendous help. So next slide. One of the things I wanted to highlight, we started this last year, was implementing brownfields roundtables. So having a meeting out in each of the regions and sharing information about grant funding and resources that are available. And right now, 3 of the 4 programs are scheduled with actual registration information available. So in June, we'll be having meetings in New Bedford, June 10th at the Whaling Museum. June 11th will be in Haverhill, and that'll be at Northern Essex Community College. And June 25th will be in Fitchburg at a municipal building right next to City Hall. So if you are folks who live in those regions and want to learn more about what brownfields funding is available, so we'll have speakers from EPA, MassDEP, Mass Development, and the Yukon TAB program, which is the technical assistance for brownfields. And those are folks who help people do brownfields grant applications. The goal is to bring in people. My target audience is mostly municipalities, so town managers, town planners, economic development officials, but also consultants and engineers and property owners and developers. If you have a project, a specific site that you're interested in that may have an opportunity to use brownfields resources, come to one of these meetings. And actually the 4th one will be in September out in Springfield. We haven't got all the details lined up, but come to these meetings. This is where the people who actually help distribute the money, they'll be there to talk about the funding that's available in their programs. Or for example, with the EPA, they have not the TAB, but they have a TBA program, Targeted Brownfield Assessment, and they can provide technical assistance for eligible parties that can use those resources. So really hoping to see that we can get as many people into these meetings. Like an example of a success story was last year, we had a meeting out in Pittsfield, and there's a property owner who had just bought an old mill in the town of Russell. They're like, hey, I have questions, how does this work? And literally said, hey, let's step out into the hallway right after this session and line up a meeting so all the stakeholders who can talk with you specifically about your site can meet with you and give you information about the resources. So these are a really great opportunity. Please share this out to your networks for people who may be interested. Registration is free, but we ask that you register so we know how many people will be coming. Each of the programs is basically a morning. So they'll go from about 8:30 till noon. And we have really good content information to share, and then Q&A, so you can actually get your specific questions answered. Next slide, please. So starting a year ago, we started receiving EPA funding through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and we are averaging out to about $800,000 a year in funding. We just received word that what the FY25 dollar amount will be. So that's the money that goes live October 1st. And as of right now, we have each of the sites highlighted on this map are locations where MassDEP is using our contractors. So we're using we have the site assessment and remedial response contractors, the SARS contract. And we're using our team to do this work at sites that are, for the most part, owned by a city or town, or for the case of Brimfield, the site is in delinquency tax and is eligible for tax taking. And we're trying to help these communities understand the level of contamination at their sites, really to line them up for the next team, which is usually the municipality, to apply for a cleanup grant. So anyway, we're in the middle of doing this work. We have fully allocated all the FY23 and 24 funds. But if you're working with municipalities and you have a site that you may think might be eligible, it's either in an EJ area or a low population town, and it's been sitting there backburnered and no one's been able to do anything with it for a while, reach out to me and we can see if we can sneak that into our priority list for FY25 and 26. And we know that we'll be getting this funding for the full 5 years of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Next slide, please. And this is just a highlight of one of those sites, which is up in Peabody. So the city of Peabody took ownership of this former tannery, which is right along a river and adjacent to the MBTA railroad tracks. And the city is planning to do a extension of the rail trail and bike path up in that neighborhood. And this property is an obstacle to that. And so we are helping with some assessment. And my hope, like depending on what level of contamination we identify, that the site might not need remediation. It might actually be able to get closed out with a risk assessment for the planned purpose for the site. But if it needs a cleanup, we're helping them develop a good data set so that they can have a good, high quality, data-rich application for an EPA cleanup grant. And so this is where DEP is actually having our staff on site, kind of being the task manager while our contractors are doing the drilling and the sampling. And this drilling work was happening 2 weeks ago. So anyway, we are absolutely in the middle of it. And that is the end of my Brownfields update. I'm happy to take any questions or hand it off.
I will just say, David, you and your Brownfields team and all the regional Brownfields coordinators, I just want to applaud your level of energy and dynamic nature, which is exactly what is needed to catapult the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup's Brownfield strategy. We are at a very important moment in time to ensure that dilapidated parcels and or underutilized parcels are brought to revitalization. It's always been that way, but especially now with this historic bipartisan infrastructure law fund, which will have a sunset soon in a couple of years, I believe. So again, I really encourage advisory committee members and the public in general to really think about ways that we can connect with you on facilitating Brownfields dialogue. And I go back to the early days of the Brownfields program, which basically sets the tone for how this works, which is really partnership and collaboration amongst our federal partners, local partners, and state partners throughout, whether it's Attorney General's Office for CNTSs or Department of Revenue or other departments that have tax breaks and things like that. David is your point of contact, running point, assisted by Abby. So please connect with Dave. I really appreciate all of the great work and clearly licensed site professionals helping us to move forward with revitalization and redevelopment across the Commonwealth. Thank you for your extraordinary work.